You are about to make the most important decision of your life. Do you, A, keep it to yourself and maybe just ask one trusted adult their opinion? Or do you, B, make a pros and cons list, talk to all your friends, go online, do all the research you can? Raise your hands if you choose A. Yeah. Couple of people. If you choose B. Alrighty. Now, this question tells me a lot about your personality. If you chose A, you're a little bit more independent, you're going to keep to yourself, you maybe trust a few people. If you chose B, you're kind of indecisive, you're anxious. You want to make sure you're making the best choice. Now, these personality traits can actually tell me what kind of cult you're most likely to fall into. So if you chose option A, you're the more independent, you're probably more likely to fall into some sort of like spiritual belief cult, like the Scientology cult I'm sure most of you have heard about. Now, if you chose B, you're probably more anxious, you're a little more worried about things that are going to happen in the future, and you're probably more likely to fall into a doomsday cult, like the Jonestown cult. Now, to tell you a little more about them, I'm going to share those two examples with you, and I'm going to start with my Jonestown people. So, Jim Jones is this guy right here. He lived in the 30s to the 70s, and he was this self-proclaimed prophet. He basically created his own religion called Jonestown, and it became this really, as you can see, like commune village that he created for all his people to live in. And it started out in Indiana, and he told all these people that followed him that, like, hey, there's a doomsday coming to Indiana. Indiana's going away in 65. So he told all those people that they had to follow him to California if they wanted to stay pure and stay within the cult. So he moved this entire group to California where he created that compound. Within the compound, there was a lot of allegations of insurance fraud, money disappearing, child abuse. A lot of really bad things were happening within this cult. And when it got the government's attention, Jones freaked out. So he moved all of them to Guyana, which is a South American country by Venezuela. In Guyana, he started this new compound, and he basically told people the same things over and over again, that there's a doomsday coming and that they need to stick with him if they want to be saved. In Guyana, there was still those horrible things happening, and people heard about it back in the U.S. So a U.S. Representative traveled to Guyana, and in Guyana, there was a lot of miscommunication between him and Jim Jones, and it led to Jim Jones freaking out and leading the entire group to a massacre, self-suicide that was really, really horrific. As you can see, all these people were victims of his ideology. Now, my Scientology people, I didn't forget about you, so if you'd like to go to the next slide. This all started with this man right here. His name is Rob Hubbard, and he wrote all of these books. And these books were his beliefs about the world that he created called Scientology. And the main belief was that humans were this immortal being called the Theatin that actually just lived inside of a physical body. And they occasionally exteriorized to avoid trauma. They were pure, they couldn't be touched. And as he wrote all these books and these stories, the Church of Scientology grew really, really rapidly. They became really concerned with how their image was portrayed, so they actually invited a lot of celebrities in. And we can kind of see the celebrities they chose, like Tom Cruise and John Travolta, show the personality traits of the cult. So it is a very independent cult, which is why my option A, people were more likely to fall into it because you chose a more independent option. So in this cult, you're very internalized. You're thinking about yourself a lot more. You're not so worried about the group and the rest of the world. And so obviously in the members, they're going to look for people who aren't very self-reliant, yet would still maybe trust that one adult, like Ron Hubbard. And if you want to learn more about them, they actually are still a very big organization that has lots of members, and they have their own website. It's called Scientology.tv. And them and also Jim Jones can also be found on the FBI Notorious Cases website. If you would like to learn more there. ABC News does a lot with Scientology because of the celebrity influence. It became such a big thing. Now, I'm not trying to say that any of you guys are bound and determined to going to fall into a cult because of how you answered a question that I set up for you to answer. But this information is super important so that we can kind of share and understand how susceptible we can actually be to people's influence. We like to tell ourselves, oh, that could never be me, and we would never fall into that. Well, think of all the people you saw in those photos. Those were all very, very normal people in Indiana that hopped to California. More people joined, and then to South America, because they were these anxious and worries and fears that they had, and they fell into this independent and self-reliant that they didn't have people to pull them out of Scientology. These cult leaders like Ron Hubbard and Jim Jones are looking for people who display specific traits that would go best with how they manipulate you. We are our own worst enemies when it comes to manipulation. Now, I'm not trying to freak any of you out. I'm sure you guys are all very independent and know who you are. But as we head out into the real world and graduate and go to college, we are very, very susceptible to these things and manipulation because this is a stressful time for us. We're making big decisions. So as you make those decisions, I encourage you to use this information to caution yourselves and stay true to yourself.